All right, we're live. I haven't used StreamYard in a while, but we're going to talk about my hip replacement. I'm 1 year out and I got some perspective to give. So if you're just had a replacement, you need a replacement, or you're thinking about maybe someday you're going to need a replacement, I'd love to give you some insight and some wisdom on this topic. Now, to kind of pre-frame all this, I have actually worked with a lot of people in the past that have a hip replacement. And what I've learned over the years is that most people wait too long. They're like, well, wait till I'm older. Like, I don't want to have it done twice. Go as long as you can. And my philosophy's never been that. My philosophy is as soon as you can't do the things you love to do, then you should have already had it done. That's always my piece of advice. As soon as you can, really quick in the chat, if you've had a joint replacement or you think you're going to need one someday, put down what joint that you're got challenges on. But for me, I actually had an experimental surgery done on my knee. It was an implant, kind of like a mild replacement in my 20s. So it wasn't my first experience. Now that was something that was really over the top. They don't do that experiment anymore. That's not a surgery they do anymore, but they learned a lot from it, as have I. I just had my hip replacement. I have a couple of shoulder reconstructions. I do what I like to do. Awesome. So yeah, that's been my advice up to this. I've worked with a lot of people that have had replacements, and I always say, do if you can't do what you love to do. So for instance, for me, at 45 years old, I have now 4 young children. At the time, I only had 3. We had a baby 6 months after my replacement, 5 months after my replacement. But what was happening is that I wasn't able to go for, I couldn't run and play catch with my son or my daughter. I couldn't chase them because sometimes if my hip flared up, it was really hard to get around for a few weeks. So that was hindersome. Now I could function, I could stay upright, I could get through my day, but I wasn't able to do the things I wanted to do. I wasn't able to go to the gym and really work out anything on my lower body because it just my hip would flare up and that's it, right? It's over. But I want to give an update though, because things aren't that great right now. For full transparency, although I play catch with my son today, and that's great. I've done a lot of really good things, but at 45 years old, having a hip replacement, and I probably have to have a few joint replacements in my lifetime. I'm working on some other ways to prevent that, but you never know. What happened was 6 weeks after my replacement, not 6 weeks, 5 weeks, 4 weeks, 4 weeks after my replacement, we had a trip to Canada, Cancun, Mexico, that we'd earned. And so I went and I got permission from my doctor to go. And my mentality, just I'm not normal in a sense of taking care of myself. Sometimes I do stupid things. If anybody knows me really well, I do dumb things. And I actually fell while I was there, and I had a partial tear of my rectus femoris of the hip I tore. I know I did the anterior approach of my hip, which, based on all the research, is the best way to go about it. But if you're younger, it's even better. If you're older, maybe it doesn't matter so much. I don't know, but you can look up that for yourself. But either way, I tore my hip, my muscle off my hip socket, and so I was really it put me back, like really put me back. So I nursed it for another 6 8 weeks of bruising and everything else, and I felt like I was getting really ahead. I was getting stronger. I was feeling really good. Now the thing is the hip pain was gone. Now I just had muscle pain that was due to me being dumb and not resting long enough. And so do you can really move better and run? I can, yeah. I don't run. I will probably never run again for any kind of distance in my lifetime. Somebody asked, just because I'm not a runner by no means, but I can play if that makes any sense. And I foresee I'll be able to play a lot of things with my kids, but competitively, I will not do competitive distance running or sprinting probably at all, but nor do I have a desire to ever do that anyway. So it's not like I'm missing out on anything there. Now I'll be able to go hiking and things like that and do like hike Machu Picchu and things like that. I'll be able to do all that. So, but anyway, I'm doing pretty good. And about 6 weeks ago, 4 weeks ago, 4 weeks ago now, I actually tore it again. So I'm having an habitual problem now. So I have to go through another phase of rehab to try to get why am I keep tearing these muscles. So it's been interesting at the same time. So the hip, it's good. The muscle is I'm having some troubles with it. So just an update. Now here's my philosophy on that. Here's my philosophy on that. My philosophy is this: is that I would rather, if you're somebody that's looking for a hip replacement, needing a joint replacement, is that what I know about the human body, what I know about people, even myself, and I'm pretty disciplined when it comes to physical activity, but when you can't use your legs and you like to exercise, you start to stop doing the things that you need to do to strengthen those muscles. So if your joint is sacrificed and you're not able to use those muscles very well, they start to atrophy and get smaller. Well, it's harder as you get older to reverse any of that or to build the strength and muscle back up. It's really hard. So my philosophy is I wanted to get it done younger is because now that I'm having some obstacles in it, that's fine. I'm still 46 years old or going to be 46. That'll be all behind me in another year or so. And I have my still some really good years to get my strength way up. And that's what I care about. Getting the strength and the muscle around the joint way, way up. If you wait till you're 70, if you did it when you're 70, you did it when you're 70. You can't stop it, but you can still go out and do the work. I know a good friend of mine, she's in her 60s. She had both her hips done and she's working her butt off. She's getting strong, and that's really important. And so the key here is if you're in your older years, your hormones and things like that aren't really geared towards building muscle. You're probably not eating enough protein to build muscle. So you're very much going to take a step back. Now, what I've done is I have some parameters, things that I've done in the past in my 30s and things like that, that I know how strong I can be. My goal is to get as close to those numbers as possible before I'm 50, so that I can now I know my threshold of how to stay strong. So I am dealing with some problems. I do have some pain in my leg. I have a hard time lifting my leg, mostly due because I'm an idiot and I do stupid things, and I don't know how to take it easy. That's a problem I have. That's why I have so many injuries. That's a personality trait, maybe, I don't know. So, but anyway, it's been a year. I'm excited. The pain is significantly less. It does tell me one thing is the pain in my left hip is way less. I do have some muscle pain, but I now feel how much my right one doesn't work as well. That's the funny thing is I have all this motion in my left hip that I don't have in my right, and I'm like, holy cow, it moves so well. It does even with the muscle limitations. I have so much more range of motion. I feel stretches in my groin that I haven't felt in years. I can stretch my glutes, which I've never done in my entire life. True story. So now I'm like, wow, I have all this feeling in my hip because of opening up the hip socket and getting a better joint in there because I have hip dysplasia. If you guys don't know this, so but anyway, it's exciting. It's been 1 year. The doctor did tell me, he goes, Dustin, it's a 2 year rehab. It's not a 6 months. It's not a 6 weeks. It's just 2 years long. He goes like a bomb goes off. They literally like cut off the head of your femur. They put a tube down or a spike down your femur. They put a capsule in the acetabulism. Mine had to be moved slightly because of my joint dysplasia, and they put it all back together. He's like, that's not like something that just ends overnight. He goes, so having your youth and your strength to gain that all back, he's like, it's a really good thing. And he goes, the likelihood that we ever have to go back in and replace it again is so little. But even if we do, he's like, it's kind of like a tire change. It's not a restructuring the whole joint. It's really just a swap out. He goes, the damage is so much less, the work, the stress on the body so much less. I'm like, well, shit, done. As soon as he told me that, I'm like, let's schedule it for tomorrow. Let's not wait. I'm thinking it's like, you're going to be worse off in the second one. He goes, not at all. I actually know somebody that's had 3 hip replacements because he had it so young in his first one. Yes, we need to age better. And so part of it is, people sometimes, I can get into the ram of it all. I do have some hormonal things that have been impacted through my surgeries, and I'll talk about that at the end here. I'm going to probably you're going to hear me start talking more about hormones in a little. Somebody asked something, did you ever try stem cell treatments? Yes, I have done stem cell treatments. I did stem cell treatments intravenous. I've done it in my knee. It worked wonderful in my knee. The thing about stem cells, I've done lots of different plasma injections, PRP it's called. And when you have a joint dysfunction, and this is something that a lot of people are ignorant by, and it's hard because I specialize in neuromuscular work. So it's something I've done a lot of time in, meaning that if the bone keeps hitting the bone, I don't care what you put in that joint. If you don't change the function of the joint from rubbing, it's going to wear back out. So every specialist that I've went to around stem cells in my hip, they basically said, don't waste your money and your time because the bone spurs and the encapsulation of the acetabulism wasn't going to be changed by anything that isn't metaphysical, that isn't outside of maybe if you believe in spontaneous healing and things like that. That's the only way it was going to change. I've been working on that for a long time and I couldn't get it. So I try everything, right? But stem cells they can't grow in an environment where the bone keeps rubbing on the other bone. There's nothing in there to give it growth. Now my knee had lots of surgeries in it. They cleaned it out. I had a lot of space in my knee to replenish. So my knee's been doing extremely, extremely good with stem cells. And so if you're getting at stem cells, get them early before a lot of the damage is going to happen. And it can be very preventative from a problem. Now, I'm talking about stem cells, like there's different forms of stem cells, but either way, in the joints, you can kind of use universal stuff. If you're going to grow a new organ, you have to have very specific stem cells and you have to do it a very specific way. But relative to cartilage, it's you can do it in a few different manners, but you have to make sure that there isn't a lot of joint dysfunction. Like my shoulders that had all the bone spurs in them, they had to take it all out. We had to clean out the shoulders first. Now they're a great candidate for stem cells because now there isn't so much joint dysfunction. There's not bone spurs driving into my tendons, causing tears, and which would be hard for stem cells to, to replenish me there. So, Rita, exactly, exactly. And the good thing about it is that, and I'm going to say this again, I highly recommend more people to do it earlier. And the rule of thumb is this: if you can't do the three things that you love the most with a lot of joy, you still might have some discomfort, but with a lot of joy, then you should have already done it. Because when you wait longer, eventually you never go back to do those things because you've lost your body's function of doing them. And so that's just my measurement stick. Because in my 20 some years of doing this and working with the human body, most people wish they would have did it earlier because they got back to better life, quality of life faster. Most people did. Now I'm young. I know people that have had them done in their 30s. I know people that have had them done in their 20s. I know people that have done them in their 40s. But I know lots of people in their 50s, 60s, and even 70s is getting kind of up there. But in their 60s, I know a lot of people that wish they would have did it in their 50s. So I hope that makes sense. But one thing I'll touch on just briefly, but is what I noticed after my surgery. Now, what I don't know is it started with my first surgery, but because my lack of ability to work out, when I had my left shoulder done first, which really made me feel better. I started working out again, training, and then soon after that, I had my right shoulder done. So both arms are not working as well. So I couldn't work out. My hip wasn't done yet. So physical working out, like building muscle, was really hard. So I noticed just less of me. Like I didn't feel that same intensity of me. Like I didn't feel as strong and confident. Strong. I would grab like a 20-pound weight and everything just felt heavy. So then I had my hip replacement done because it's like get them all done. And I just wanted them all done, right? Well, my daughter was born, and I was watching, and I was aware of some research behind when your kids are born, your hormones, men's hormones go down, their testosterone goes down during the birthing process while the woman's pregnant, and then of course when the baby comes. So I started getting my testosterone levels tested, and they were in the tank, like absolutely in the tank. Now, ladies, yours does different hormones, but men, this happens. And they were 1/3 of what they were last time I'd had them tested. No, I can't take that back. Not the last time, the time before that, when I felt like I was probably in my right range. They were 1/3. So I was 1/3 down my testosterone levels. And other hormones were also just lessened. They weren't necessarily, one was necessarily off the charts bad, but it was definitely not me, if that makes any sense. Now you can say, yeah, you're getting older, but let's be honest, in 8 years, I don't want to feel like I'm 1/3 less, right? That doesn't have to be that way. Not everybody's hormones do go down when their testosterone goes down when they get older. That's not always the case, especially if you take care of yourself, you're healthy, and you're doing weight training, you eat plenty of protein. You can definitely keep your testosterone levels up. And if you're pursuing something, that matters too. If you're pursuing something that's motivating you, also can help keep them up. Like all these things, right? So I started testing my testosterone, but I didn't feel like me. I definitely didn't. So every month, because we just had a baby, I didn't go on any replacements. I was just going to watch the trends. And slowly I've watched them come up, right? Slowly. But the question is how long do they come back to normal after a baby, right? But what I'm suspecting happened, and which I don't have the numbers to suggest, based on symptoms, I'm suspecting that happened as my testosterone level started dropping 2.5 years before when my surgery started. So I think I went into having a baby with already relatively low, already been half down or 1/3 down. So it's been really interesting watching how that's coming back up. Although I probably in the next 36 testosterone to see what happens because my numbers still haven't recovered. And it's been a year. Well, it's a year since my surgery. We're going on a year to the birth of the child. But this was interesting. is because I work from home, I spend a lot of time with my kids and my baby. Well, the study shows that if you're a male and you have a baby, your testosterone level goes down. There's a lot of reasons behind that. I can dive into that on another live, but they said the more time a dad spends with their child, the lower it'll stay longer. So it has to do with some primitive things. This is all primitive stuff, right? It's one of the reasons why men can gain weight during pregnancy and things like that. It's actually it's not sympathy, it's actually biology. Just to be clear, it's biology. It's just this is probably important for the species of humans. But anyway, it's been interesting watching. So I'm going to probably do what it's called is like almost like a reset, like bring my numbers up to kind of restart the engines, so that I can get back and work out harder, do the things that keep testosterone levels up, which is physical exertion, obviously pursuing, which I continuously do, sleeping, drink less alcohol, which I've been cutting back quite a bit on those too, to bring those numbers back up. Because if this becomes my new normal at 46, in a short amount of time, if I go in from, let's say, 900 total testosterone and my free was at like 27, and I go down to 306, right? If that goes down to here and I don't recover it at least to a higher level, then this becomes my new normal. So I went from here to here, and this is my new normal. And eventually I believe this is how I'm supposed to be and live. Well, that might never be the case. My normal should be here, maybe a little less, but not necessarily all the way down here. And this happens often after people go through injuries, emotional stress, physical stress, lifestyle changes. What happens is they can reset, or a surgery, and that's another long conversation with people. But to me, this is important. So if you're above the age of 40, you got to set a bar and a standard for yourself to live by. At the same time, realize it's not always your effort. There's a fallacy out there. It's not a fallacy. I don't even know what word to call it, but there's a problem out there. And I watched a video about a guy. He's a model, male model, and he was just like, the guy looks amazing. He's a beautiful man, right? And but he didn't feel that way. Everything was harder. It's like almost like every day. I was telling my wife, it's like every day I feel like there's like 30 or 40 extra pounds of weight just on my shoulders, like weighing me down, like to get off. Everything's just harder, right? So what happens, you get meet people that are like, just suck it up and do it, suck it up and do it, suck it up and do it. Well, sometimes your biochemistry is not where it needs to be because of circumstances that maybe you didn't realize, like a baby, or like accumulation of surgeries, or excessive amount of stress. And what I found, unfortunately, is stress is the biggest problem. And it's not stress is bad, it's just that we can't handle it or deal with it right. And we carry it all so much, and that drives our hormones down, right? And telling a person that has low hormones, because when you have lower hormones, you feel higher levels of stress, by the way. So people are like, it's discipline, it's structure, you're this, you're that. And for some people, there's a level of truth to that, but that doesn't mean that if they get disciplined, that they can have enough discipline long enough to get the change out, to change the biochemistry to support what they want to accomplish. And so these things all play a role together. I'm going to be talking a lot more about it. So that's why I'm a huge fan of integration or functional medicine. I have a team of doctors that I work with. Most of them some are inside the traditional system and some are outside of it, because at the end of the day, like, I got to set my own bar. And if you're above the age of 40, I'm going to say this again, what's your bar? What's your standard? So if you have younger kids, by the age of 18, from 18 to 30, I used to say 25, I would say to 30, every year, give them the biggest gift. Go do a full blood panel, not from your traditional doctor. Go find a functional doctor, get all their every level tested. And then, I mean, when I say every level, if you don't have at least 4, 5, 6, 7 pages of blood labs, you didn't do nearly enough. Just to give you a perspective, people go, "I got them all done." No, you didn't. I have a one test that we do. It's 96 pages long, so you did get them all done. But the end of the day is set a standard for yourself. I want to sustain a 12 to 13 minute walking mile. Is that even obtainable, Jeff? I don't know if I can walk that fast. If it is, dude, I appreciate you, man. Go for it. I want to see it. But because the reality is that I do that through my blood labs. I have a standard that I want to live by based off of my numbers, but my numbers are when I was about 35, 36. That's where my number started. It didn't start when I was in my 20s. So I don't know what that peak was. Not that I want to live at my peak, but I don't know the contrast from 25 to 35. I don't know. I'd have to speculate and guess, go by feel. So one of them is blood labs, right? What is my thyroid? What is my, estrogens? What is my testosterone? What is my conversions? What are my, cholesterols? What are, like, what's my standard? What's my white blood cell count on average, right? It can always fluctuate from time to time, but what's my average? Is it averaging trending down? Is it averaging staying the same? Is it coming down too fast? So this is not an expensive thing to do, but give that gift to your kids and start yours today and keep it going. So I have some doctors that I always recommend to people because they just have worked well for me. The other thing that I would tell you to do is set a standard for physical exercise and health, because you can measure. The only nutritional standard I would tell you to do is set a protein goal. That's the only nutritional standard I would tell you to do is set a protein goal. So for women, it's usually between 50 and 100 grams of protein a day, probably more towards 75 to 100 on average. So you need to be more. For men, it could be 120 to 250 grams of protein a day. That's the standard. Don't go below that most of the time. Always stay at that standard. If you tend to be more overweight, you got to be in the lower, under 100 carbs a day, maybe under 50. If you're not, weight isn't a problem, then you can stay at around that 100 to 150 grams of carbs a day. Like, that's how simple this can be. As for a standard that I think is really important, is set a standard for physical activity. Because at the end of the day, when you look at the studies and the science, is that an object in motion wants to stay in motion, an object at rest wants to stay at rest. If you don't move, you will stop moving. That's just what it is, and it only gets harder later. Now, when hormones are in the tank, stress is high, you're injured, shit's complicated. I'm just going to tell you, I've lived that way for many, many years. Been under high levels of stress. I've had multiple injuries, and I've had new kids and family, and all this stuff happening. So I know that it can be hard, and I've seen my hormones drop with that. So that's where I bring in my team to help me. What do we need to elevate? And then what do I need to keep doing to get out of it, right? To get back to that standard. Don't settle. If you just had a surgery, don't settle for the standard. Because what happens is before the surgery or before you get sick or injured, you feel good, right? Let's say. Then you get sick and you feel like shit. Well, then you come back, you can be halfway back. And I'll tell you about Mike someday, halfway back, and you feel so good because you felt so bad before. So you go, you're here, you get sick, you go to here, you come back to here, and you think you're back, but you're not. You're this far down from where you were before, right? And so you got to set that standard. And the only way to know that is to have some parameters in place. One of them is your blood labs, things like that. But the other one is physical activity. How fast can you walk a mile? Know your standard, set it, set a bar, and know that when you're 80, it might be a little bit less. That's okay. But is it so slow? You want to slow it down as slow as you can. How many push-ups can you do? If you can't do push-ups, how many pull-ups can you do? If you can't do pull-ups, how many sit-ups can you do? If you can't do sit-ups, how long can you hold a plank? Get a machine at the gym and figure out how strong you are on that machine for 10 reps or for 3 reps. And every month you test yourself and know that if I'm getting weaker, I have this new idea I'm working on. So I'm not going to tell everybody about it, but it's pretty exciting. You know that most scientists measure strength by a gripper, or I think it's called an ergometer for grip. I think it's what it's called. I don't know. But anyway, it's for grip. You could literally buy a grip strength test and just test your grip every month and write it on a board. And you'll see when your body's breaking down and getting sick and you're not getting strong, you'll see a steeper decline. Your goal is to set a bar as high as you can and maintain it with the least amount of work. And that's another longer topic, but maintain it with the least amount of work, because if you have to excessively work to maintain it, you might be causing other damage. Then eventually the whole thing crashes. I'm a pro at that. I've done that many times. So I know that route really, really well. So you want to do the least amount to maintain it, because then you're adding just the appropriate amount of stress to stay strong and healthy without overstressing the body to deteriorate or break it down. So anyway, 1 year out of my hip replacement, I gotta say I'm very proud and happy I did it. I am having some complications with my muscles on my left hip of some tears that I created. My fault. My fault. That one's on me. That I have to now rehab and put back together and get stronger and get it back behind me. And I will be talking more. If I do go on TRT, I will be talking more about that. I'll probably just do a small cycle of it to bring my numbers back up. Rita, that is true. But if you heard what I said earlier, know for a fact, Rita said, my only barrier is me. That is true. And at the same time, know that they say this: a turtle never gets to the top of a fence pole by itself. And so there's a presenter out there that's really bold, and he reminded me of me when I was younger. And if you know David Goggins, I think he's a freaking beastly stud. Although I don't actually agree with his principles, because at the end of the day, what's up, Tyler? Tyler, I'll see you. Hey guys, I'm headed out to Reno in a couple weeks. Actually, next weekend I think it is. Like 10 days, I'll be out in Reno and Carson City. Super stoked for that. But if at the end of the day, like if it's up to you, most people need support and help. They need guidance, right? I could say that all day long. It's up to me to get my hormones back in check. I've been working on it for a long time, and for whatever reason, I'm not getting there. So I can keep trying to fix that or solve that, or create interventions and find people that understand things differently and help guide me back to that, and then sustain what I gain. And so that's the power. I used to be kind of anti-Western medicine for a while because I felt like they failed me. The reality is they didn't. I was failing myself, right? They were trying to support me the best they could. So I say that because I think it's important that that's what David Goggins would say. My only barrier is me, and there's a level of belief on that. But I think if you only have that mentality, I think you'll never get to your fullest potential because other people can bring so much strength to you and wisdom to you that you can't find sometimes in yourself. I was a person that never asked for help. I always tried to find a way to do it myself to the point where it broke me down. And so I know I'm not going to go there. So I hope that makes sense, Rita. So like, yes and no. Yes, you need you and your barriers, you maybe, but just be aware that there's a lot of people that are there to help you get better also, and that's important to surround yourself with the right tribe. And so anyway, I haven't done lives in a while. I'm working on them. Scheduling is busy. It's been crazy. Sometimes I don't even know what to talk about. So I could talk about a lot of things. Obviously, I talk a lot about ketones. I have new philosophies on dieting techniques. I'm trying to share more of that. More my people that live where I live, they think I'm keto dieter, and I'm not. I don't do keto anymore. I eat relatively low carb. Try to eat as healthy as possible, but I found a good blend of eating better and drink ketones. But because I'm drinking ketones, I think I'm doing the ketogenic diet. So it just tells me a lot more people need to be educated on it. It's a product, not diet. And so I'm going to do more and more talking about that. Is that the biggest breakthrough in supplement history occurred, and still people think it's about a diet. And I found a diet that I like, and I'm going to stick to for the time being because it's working extremely well for me. And so I hope that everybody can find that diet for themselves. And for me, it's not a ketogenic diet. It is a hybrid, low carb, high protein diet that just works with drinking ketones. So I hope that makes sense. Jessica, good to see you. Facebook user 257. I know the carnivore diet very well. I've actually tried it a couple times, and I don't personally like it at all. For my own personal, what I found about the carnivore diet is people that are extremely inflammatory, have a lot of inflammation issues, tend to do well on the carnivore diet. Although I don't believe most of them will ever stick to it or stay on it long term. So I hope that makes sense. What's funny you say that, Jessica. She said this lifestyle changed my ketones. Life change. Love my ketones. Changed. This is a lifestyle change. Oh, yeah, that's what she said. I just read it wrong. This is a lifestyle change. Yeah, and you got to create your own lifestyle. That's what Prove It does. Helps you create a lifestyle that's sustainable to you. But most people in their mind think they need to be on a diet. And so we got to change that. That's going to take 20 years, by the way. 20-year approach. But as for the carnivore diet, yeah, I know it extremely well. I know I've seen some pretty cool podcasts. One of my mentors in the paleo world, Dr. Cordain, did a really cool podcast on it. And the guy that he was talking with was talking about, like, crunching up the bone, how to eat the brain out of the animal, and all these other things. Well, that's not a sustainable lifestyle for most people. For an extremist that lives out in Costa Rica, that might be, but for most people, they're not going to sustain that. The carnivore diet is a great way to lose weight. Awesome way, because you're basically in a deep state of ketosis and you're eating high protein. The reality is that it's how do you want to live your life? Now, I tell people, like, if you like to, I love challenges. I think people should constantly do challenges when it comes to lifestyle. So find a baseline that you can then live your life by, And then if it's once a month, do a couple day challenge. Like right now, I'm doing a 5 day I fast, right? So that's a challenge. It's just a little bit more strict than normal. And then once a month, I do a 60-hour reboot. Well, that's a little challenge, right? I might go and say, hey, I'm going to go carnivore for 10 days, right? I might do that as a challenge to me because it's challenging my psyche. I'm kind of checks and balancing of what I'm doing. And then I go back to what is relatively normal to me and I might make some slight adjustments to it. But when I see things like the carnivore diet, my thing is I know people, and people get in debates with me all the time and argue. And there's a guy out there that anyway they just get into these debates and argue. Well, if you don't, it's not about what's right or wrong. It's about people. It's about getting people to where they need to be, and it's never about losing weight. It's about living life, right? But ultimately, you want to learn how to live your life with the weight that you're looking for, right? You want to find people go, "What's your goal? I want to lose weight." Well, that's never your goal. Like outside of a wedding or an actress or an actor. I used to work with actors and actresses a long time ago, and they want to lose weight for a part, right? Well, that is their goal. That's their outcome. Most people want to lose a certain number on and get to a certain size in their pants and learn how to live their life so they can enjoy their life. Most people want to get to where they want to be and know they can go have some ice cream on a date night or they can go out and celebrate and not get fat again. That's their real goal, right? But they keep looking for the one number, and that's the mistake people make. Joseph McClellan says this way. I forget what he calls it. He calls it an afterthought, I think. So it's like, okay, my goal is I want to lose 30 pounds, and I want to maintain it and live my life so that I can be free and flexible with my kids when I go out to have ice cream, right? That's a very different goal because what you're doing is you're subconsciously programming your brain to lose the weight and live rather than to lose the weight and it's abruptly stops because then everything just usually comes back on for multiple reasons, right? So anyway, but I'm nothing. No, I don't have anything against any diet. I mean, I work with vegans, I work with carnivore peeps, I work with everybody. My question comes back down to is can you maintain a lifestyle that maintains the results you're looking for when you're in that state, or are you gonna have to adjust it at some point? And that's the question. Set your bar, right? If you go on a diet and your bar lowers, and that's the wrong diet to maintain on. You might test yourself on it, but it isn't the diet you maintain. So if you go become a vegan and your strength goes down, that's not acceptable. In my mind, it's not acceptable. If you become a carnivore and your strength goes down, that's not acceptable, right? So hope that all makes sense. No doubt the low carb 18, 16-hour fast is very sustainable for me, eating for 5 days a week. Awesome, Jeff. But you know what's interesting, Jeff, is there'll be a point where it won't be as sustainable. You're probably gonna adjust out of that diet. So I want you to stay open to that time because as you build more strength and muscle, you might find that there's times where you have to refuel your body differently. You might get into it. I have people that started, they've never done CrossFit at 50 years old, they're doing CrossFit and running marathons. Well, they can't sustain that small of an eating window for the work they're putting in. They have to fuel their body more. And I had to they couldn't get it. Like they're like, but this is how I'm supposed to do it. I'm like, no, there's no how. You added another thing to your life that you have to make up for. And the more you exercise, the more nutrition you have to be responsible for because the more demand you put on your body. The less you exercise, the more you can eat like crap, to be honest. I hate to say that. But in some ways that's true. Yes. So Jeff, you want to feed the warrior. I have the wolf shirt on, right? You got to feed the warrior. Like if you don't hit your protein goal, that's why I say like from nutrition, have a protein goal and hit it most of the time. And it's harder to do when you're fasting a lot. So just keep that in mind. If you're coming up short in your goal, you're potentially slowing down your metabolism. Obviously, ketone support and help that, but it still can slow it down if you're doing it long term. So you want to feed the warrior. So I do a lot of challenges with people. Let's say that you're doing your 5 day fast, right, which I love to do, and I do a lot of intermittent fasting. But on the weekends, I'm definitely more free. If I come out on the weekends and I'm so much stronger on Monday after 2 days of eating more, then my fast has been too aggressive. I shouldn't come out on Monday super strong. Maybe a little bit, but not much, if that makes any sense. I learned this in college. And so if you notice by Friday after fasting for 5 days, you don't feel like if your walk time gets slower, then you're overtraining or you're undernourished or you're sleeping like shit. I guess one of those things, or you're undernourished. And this makes sense because if you're so what happens is that on Wednesday I would tell you to don't fast 5 days in a row, fast for 2 days. Wednesday refeed, and then fast 2 more days and see how you walk on Friday. You might go, wow, my walk's higher on Friday. Well, good. That tells me that your body's in too much of a loss or too much of a deficit, and you want to stay up a little bit more because your demands on your body is higher because you're walking a lot or pushing it more. So, what is the average protein goal? Does it change by age? No, it doesn't. So, it doesn't change by age, Nick. It's funny. I was listening to a podcast. The guy's a protein genius, and he doesn't like when you do percentages, like if your diet is fat, carbohydrates, and protein, because protein shouldn't be a percentage. It should be a constant. So after the age of, let's just call it 18 to 25, if you're still growing, it's going to be a little different, and your protein impacts you slightly different when you're younger. But let's say at 25, you kind of set a standard or goal. If you want to maintain your metabolism, maintain your muscle mass, you set a goal of protein. Now, what I don't know is what that is for you. I can give you a range. For men, at the low end is 125 a day, 125 grams a day. Now, I'm talking about animal-based protein. If you're a vegan or a plant-based protein eater, you have to have more than what I'm saying because not all that protein is utilized right or utilized well enough. So you have to, I'm talking about animal-based protein. And so 125 to 250 for a man. It can be really wide. I would say most men are somewhere between 150 and 200 is where most men should sit on average. Okay. Now, if you're a physical athlete, you're pushing your body more, you're going to be a little higher than that. If you're a smaller frame, 130-pound male, you probably can be, right around a pound. I would tell men 1 pound per body weight. Some people will say 2 pounds per lean body mass. So it kind of depends on who you believe, but it's really, you just got to figure it out for yourself. And there's body types that matter to that too. Certain body types are going to be on the higher side. The bulky people that just tend to get muscular fast tend to be a little higher protein. The lean people tend to be a little lower on the protein, on the low side of that, of their numbers. But a simple way is 1 pound per body weight. I go a little under that. I don't go for 185 grams of protein a day. I shoot for 150 to 175 a day. That's my range, and it's where I'm staying for now. And then I'm going to reassess it. Now I've changed. I used to be a lot more muscular, and I've came down partly because I wanted to, partly because my injuries made me. And that's so my journeys. I've kind of found a new normal over the years. For women, typically 75 to 100 grams of protein. There are some women that I would say can get away with 50 grams of protein a day. The lighter, little framed women that don't gain weight very easily typically can stay a little lower on protein in general. But 75 to 100 grams of protein a day. If you drink Prove It products, the Keto Pro, I would put it at 100. I would put it at 20 grams to 25 grams of protein a day. So because of the way it's formulated with the branched chain amino acids, so this is a great product for people that can't get enough to bump it up without pounding a bunch of food in their belly, because that's usually why they can't get enough, is they're just not hungry for it. When you're in ketosis, sometimes it can dampen your hunger down. So protein is like sometimes harder to get. What I use for animal protein is I use chicken, I use turkey, I use elk, rabbit. I don't use rabbit, but I'd like to. Beef, I eat beef a couple times a week, probably. I had it tonight, actually. I'm allergic to fish, but I do recommend fish is great. If you're okay with doing dairy products, Greek yogurt is a great way to get protein in. Of course, Keto Pro. I don't tell people to do a lot of protein shakes, but if you just can't fill the gap, use Keto Pro. If you need to get some additional ketones or protein shake, get some additional protein shake. Whey-based protein is good if you're okay with dairy. It's actually one of the better ones. There are some collagen-based proteins. There are some bone broth-based proteins out there that I actually haven't seen the data on it to see if it's better than whey, but whey's been a high standard for a long time. It's just that you also can have an allergy to dairy, so then going with the other sources are a better fit for people. I just got back from my Stretch Lab session. Wow, that's awesome. I've never done Stretch Lab. I have to try it one of these days. Most of my joint pains don't allow it to happen, so I'm always just tense because it always hurts. So let's see. Maybe I'll take a muscle relaxer and go get stretched out, so I can relax. Nick, I hope that helps you with the protein goals. But it doesn't matter about age. It matters about you think about protein as it's kind of like your metric to maintain your metabolism. If it's too low, your metabolism will slow down. Same thing with calories. Calories matter. If they're too low, you'll slow you down. But I always tell people focus on protein first. It's hard to eat too much crap of the other stuff when you get your protein goals in. So Nick, let's say that you're at 100 and let's say you're going for 165 grams of protein or 160 grams of protein. Well, you'd want to do that over 3 meals. That's where it gets a little tricky if you're intermittent fasting, because if you're eating 80 grams of protein at one time, it's hard for your body to simulate all that. Some of that will probably be converted back into glucose, most likely. So you don't want to eat 20 grams or 18 grams. You're going to want to eat maybe 30 at the minimum, up to 50. You could probably go as high as 60 grams. So if you're going for 160 grams, so you're in reality, you're shooting towards 50 grams of protein 3 times a day to hit the 150, just to kind of put it in perspective. So a chicken breast, like a pretty good sized chicken breast, is 50 grams of protein. So just kind of, so that'd be 2 chicken thighs for me, is what I have. And that's my 50 grams of protein. So Greek yogurt has 16 in it for a cup, right? So I might have to do Greek yogurt with a piece of chicken or with some, I do with this. So this is 20, Greek yogurt 16. So then I'm putting me there. I might slip in a fourth little snack to get my protein up of 25 grams. So it's not a, it's very easy people to undereat their protein goals. Now, if you're starting with your protein goals right now and you're like, well, I'm only eating right now 120. Well, I wouldn't put you at 180 tomorrow. I would tell you, okay, let's shoot for 140 for a week and then go to 150 and see how you feel and see how your body's feeling. But prioritize that. Have that first, because if you eat that first, it's really hard to overeat all the other stuff. Having a little bit of ice cream after you eat your protein and maybe some vegetables, if you're eating enough amount, well, it's hard to eat too much ice cream. Like you just have a little bowl. And I do eat ice cream these days. Like I just go and have the small cup, 1 scoop. I don't know how much of anything that's in it. I don't ever pay attention to the caloric energy of it all. Okay, I had that, but I always have that after what I do, if that makes sense. Now I might have it at 3 o'clock in the afternoon with my kids. But I always make sure my protein goals is not there's not a negotiation in there. I'm going to hit them. And so anyway, I hope that makes sense, but you hit those numbers. I promise you. My mentor of mine, he wrote an article, eat protein and nuts for breakfast. And so I put a lot of people on that, but especially if you have a young boy, if you have like a 16-year-old or a 20-year-old or a 14-year-old boy, you can do this with athletic girls too. But give them a good like 40 ounces of protein, 30 to 40 ounces, depends how big they are, and a handful of nuts, like Brazil nuts, just a variety of different nuts, and change it up, the nuts. And within 2 weeks, you won't even recognize that boy. You won't even recognize him if they eat it. You will not. Certain type of nut, mixed nuts, mix it up. Brazil nuts, throw a couple of Brazil nuts in there. They got some really good stuff in there. But if you're an older man, get Brazil nuts, but just have some Brazil nuts. There's some good stuff in there for us men. But you won't recognize that boy in 2 weeks. You won't. The voice. You're driving up dopamine. You're driving up testosterone. You're just. It's like feeding the freaking warrior to go to war. It's amazing. Focus in school, get better. It's absolutely extraordinary. So yeah, he wrote that article, and it's been well published now, and it works really well, really, really well. And it helps with body composition, because think about, most of these boys and kids are eating cereal for breakfast or toast for breakfast. They're not getting ready for battle. They're getting ready to, I don't know, sit on their thumbs for a while and do nothing. I don't know. Like that boy at 14 is hungry to go grow hormonally. Like that's primitively how we're programmed. And at that age, from let's call it 12 to 14 to 25, that is the prime age to bring out the warrior, right? And it just makes such a huge impact on them. And so get that protein in the front end. It's amazing what it can do, but it can work well for you all too. And so I do have mornings where I eat earlier with protein. I don't eat at 5 a.m. like I used to. I usually eat at 8 or 9 or 10 sometimes. But then I do my intermittent fasting sometimes, and I do my reboot sometimes. So I call it calorie confusion, and I do a lot of variety of it because my body just tells me to do that. I've been doing this long enough where I just learned to listen to it, and I don't try to follow the schedule. So, yes, electrolytes for high school athletes. I like Prove-It electrolytes. I'm biased towards those because I know what's in them. There's one other company that I've used in the past that I've always liked too, especially where you live there, Tyler. But hydration. I was the kid that always cramped up, so I would drink like 2 bottles of Gatorade during the day of a game, and eat a whole thing of bananas, and I just didn't realize how important water was. So, but yeah, that's something we could talk a lot about. Like definitely recommend hydration. I'm not a big fan of Gatorade. I'm a much bigger fan of high quality water. Mountain Springs is my favorite. Fiji probably number two, and Evalon number three. Water, if you're buying the water, none of those are super inexpensive. They all you're premium on those. But electrolytes are huge. Before Prove It launched our electrolytes here. Now, the one thing is, if you're not drinking our ketones, you need extra sodium, so you're not going to get it in this product. But this is an unbelievable product for that. And then if you're not drinking sodium, or you're not getting extra sodium in different ways by drinking ketones, you would want to add some extra sodium based electrolytes, or at least just more salt, because you want to make sure you have plenty of sodium, especially if you're a sweater, because that can really decrease performance big time. Dehydration is such a big problem for performers, and they don't realize it because they drink a lot of water, or their hydration drink sucks. So it's just not very good. They're selling something that tastes good and not actually delivers much hydration. And it's all customizable to every person. So, but I have to go. It's 8:09. I've been on for 45 minutes, way longer than anticipated. But it's good to be back on lives. I go through cycles. Sometimes I'm like, I don't know what to say. Today I went through like 9 topics. So now I can break each one of them down individually. But if you ever have anything you want me to go live on, it probably doesn't matter. I probably have some awareness of it, or at least an opinion on it. Don't ever hesitate to hit me up. Tell me what to go live on, and then you can always invite to that if it helps. If it's protein, if it's hormones, if it's my experience with hormones, if it's electrolytes, if it's hip replacements, joint replacements, surgeries, timing, how to work with kids. I've worked with young athletes and kids for many years. Has been my big passion. So I have a lot of thoughts and philosophies on children. Now I have children, and I understand it's not as easy to implement as what it was when you're single and you don't have kids. It sounds good, but it's not always hard to implement. But now I understand that better, so I can always give guidance on that too. So with that said and done, y'all, I'm out. Cheers. Good night.